Hello everyone from Walden University's Career Services Center. Welcome to our webinar, Your Digital Identity as a Scholar-Practitioner. I'm Lisa Cook, Senior Director of Career Services, and I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Daniel Salter, who's the Director of Strategic Research Initiatives for the Center for Research Quality. And we would like to give Dr. Salter frequent flyer miles because this is his 5th webinar with us this evening. So we're really pleased to have him here. Hi, Dr. Salter. How are you tonight?
Good. Ready to go.
Good. Great to go. Great. Okay, we are too. And so also joining me is Nicole Skalski, Senior Career Services Advisor, and she will be providing our technical moderation and pushing our slides out today. And she's been working with Dr. Salter on developing content and getting ready for this evening. So that said, I want to just briefly introduce our Career Services Center team. There are 5 of us. We're all full-time professionals working out of the Minneapolis office. We have been asked if we work out of our cars. The answer is no. We actually belong in a real office building in downtown Minneapolis, very close to the Mississippi River. And our mission is to educate, coach, and advise our learners to proactively manage their careers. So before we dive into our topic for today, we would like to ask you a question regarding your own digital identity. And Nicole is going to launch that poll.
Great, Lisa. Thank you. So a really good question that we should all ask ourselves is, have you Googled yourself within the last 6 months? So a simple question, just yes or no, and it should be coming up on your screen. Totally related to our digital identity and establishing also your career plan and what we're talking about today, your academic digital identity. So yes, no, have you Googled yourself within the last 6 months? And it looks like so far the majority of you all are saying no, 64% no, so you came to the right place, and Dr. Salter today is going to give us some good tips. So I'm sharing the responses now. 64% no, have not Googled themselves within the last 6 months, and 36 yes. So thank you for your participation, and now I'll hand it back to Lisa to introduce our faculty presenter again, Dr. Daniel Salter.
Great. And I have to confess, I'm in the no category. How about you, Nicole?
I'm in the no category, too.
Yeah, okay, so I guess we're in good company in the no category for this. So it's a good thing you're here, Dr. Salter, to tell us about this. So as I mentioned, Dr. Daniel Salter is the Director of Strategic Research Initiatives for the Center for Research Quality. He's also served as a faculty member in the PhD in Education program in the Riley College of Education and Leadership. And as I mentioned before, he's been a very actively engaged speaker for our doctoral webinar series, of which this is another addition to that series this evening. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Salter.
Thanks, Lisa, Nicole. And I just want to virtually wag my finger at 66 of you and say you probably need to just get in this habit of knowing what you're about. Thanks for that introduction. As Lisa said, I'm in the Center for Research Quality now. I was previously, and I have some students in the Riley College of Education, where I worked for a few years before coming to CRQ. Before that, I was at the Pennsylvania State University as a professor and done a lot of different things, have my PhD in higher ed, and I've had have had a long interest in technology before it was even a cool thing to be doing, and this one particular topic is a particular interest to me because it's an interesting blend of technology and identity of self. So what I want to do this evening here is these are my objectives, and I have a lot of information in the slides so that somebody can see this later, and I don't like to read from them, but that's why the information's in there so somebody can see it. My objectives here is to kind of examine why you'd want to pay attention to this in the first place, really develop an understanding of the challenges, and it's not a simple thing to do to keep and maintain a digital identity. Understand the forms of view, and that's how I've kind of focused the slides I have coming up here is the different forms of view as you are online. Want to look at a handful of online resources for this process. By no means an exhaustive list. I've tried to find 5 or 6 of what I think are the more popular ones or the easier ones to use. And then hopefully you leave here with some strategies to kind of create your own digital identity as a practitioner or scholar. It's appropriate for people just starting out and for a person like myself who is kind of at the end or moving toward the end of his career. So next slide, please. Okay, so a quick definition, digital identity. I think the best way to think about your digital identity is that it's the totality of every little trace that you've left on the internet. As you well know, everything is traced, all the emails you send, all the URLs you've visited, all those little online footprints. So I think the stuff we're talking about here, though, are the ones that other people can see. So the places where you register with a particular kind of service or something where others can see that you're a part of that. I would just say right up front, if you don't control this, it will control you. Even now, you know, one of the first things you will, a big eye-opener for me in this was early, my daughter has kind of a unique name that we gave her, and we just, on a whim, typed in her name to find out how many other people had that first name. And what freaked me out a little bit was the first time it popped up was in the acknowledgments in my dissertation where I acknowledged my daughter and my son in that page. So everything you're doing out there is tracked in some way, and you can, again, control it or not be. There are many different views on, I don't mean to scare everybody, I mean, you can make it work to your advantage. There are many different views out there, the personas or whatever, but you want to be consistent across all of them, and I think that's part of the challenge here. Some friendly tips before we get into it. As much as possible, you need to keep your professional digital identity completely separate from your personal identity. You know, I don't want to Google you looking for the research you've done and find your spring break pictures from Cabo San Lucas. So try to keep those things as separate as much as you can. I know that it's kind of hard, but and some people, I have colleagues who just don't have a boundary like that. That, you know, one tweet coming from a good friend of mine is about the paleo diet and how much he hates it, and the next tweet is something about higher education law. So, you know, that's up to you. Be careful of everything you write, comment on, track, upload. It's all tracked. You know, I'm going to say later, pay attention to the settings on these accounts. I had actually inadvertently clicked on an article when I was in one of these sites, and it pulled up, and I was like, okay, that's not what I'm looking for, and I closed it. And a couple days later, I got a note from the author saying, I saw that you clicked on my article. Do you have some questions about it? And I went in and quickly changed my settings in that thing. So just be really careful. Like I said, double check all your privacy settings. Know where those are in any service that you use from, you know, especially Facebook and all those things. Okay, so a couple other caveats, because I wouldn't be an academic if I didn't have to qualify everything at the beginning here. There's no single solution for all users. There are dozens of different things out there, and I think you need to kind of assess what's best for you at this point in your career and what you're trying to achieve. Some of these services overlap. Some of them are very similar in nature. I think that's a frustration that many of us have right now, is like, which ones of these things that are exactly the same do I invest my time in? Some are dedicated solutions for scholars. We're going to look at ResearchGate and some of those. Others have kind of been co-opted, if you will, by researchers. Probably the most popular non-dedicated for scholars only kind of thing that's out there is Twitter. A lot of scholars use Twitter. Takes a lot of time to keep them current. As you're going to see, it's a lot of work just to set one of them up. I would say, again, just as one more last, decide which ones you choose by what you do. Okay, so let's look at a few of these. There's a lot of them out there. I've pulled a handful of them. Right up front, I would recommend that you get yourself an ORCID. Now, ORCID is an open source kind of persistent digital identifier. You can see mine down on the screen there. It's a 16-digit number. It's a way for you to tag yourself some way so that you are the same you. I was surprised. I have what I think is a kind of unique name, but there are like 5 other Dr. Daniel Salters out there. One's a dentist in Santa Fe. Another one does work in the UK. So, even even with a unique name, there are other people out there. So this 16-digit identity number, just a way to keep you kind of like a Social Security number for researchers. And you just go and apply for it. It's all free. It's all open source. Just something you should have. An alternative, if you want, the Thomson Reuters people, they have one called Researcher ID. They are not open source. It's tied into a lot of the proprietary services they provide, but it's probably in that domain the most popular one. I'm a fan of OrcID because it was developed by scholars and researchers for scholars and researchers. Next slide, please. All right. Here's one you should be familiar with, Google. Hopefully you've all used Google Scholar for conducting your searches for your research, but it is also a way for you can set up your own little profile there. You see my account, and get used to my lovely bald head here because you get to see it over and over again on all these accounts I've set up. And anyway, so there I am, my university. I can click on that and go there. Under there, you see something that you're going to see in a lot of these is how I've tagged myself, basically. These are my research interest areas: higher education, Jungian theory, technology, graduate education, measurement. Those are the kind of things I'm interested in. And I've tagged myself in some way so that others looking for me. Underneath there, and I just want to highlight a few things in here. You should be familiar with this environment already, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. But as a profile, you see some of the articles that I've written there. Google does me the favor of sorting them by what's been cited most. A little article that I did with a couple of my colleagues, my ex-Penn State students, Ray Hunko and Dan Merson, we did an article that has actually been quite popular and cited a lot of stuff. And the fun thing about Google for me as a researcher is if I click on that 81 you see there, I go into a different screen and it will show me all 81 articles that have cited that article. And that's a great way to kind of network yourself and reach out if I wanted to some of these folks. Over on the right-hand side are some simple metrics. If you're in a tenure earning position or something, you may want these things to say, look how many people have downloaded it. The H-index, the I-10, those are just kind of indices that indicate the popularity or how much. And then you see my one linked co-author, Ray Hunko at Iowa State. So you should be pretty familiar with Google Scholar. Again, and up above, just one more thing I forgot to mention, you can follow me as well. Okay, now here's one that you may, thank you, Nicole. All right, so here's one you may not be familiar with, Chronicle Vitae. The Chronicle of Higher Education folks have been they've been a newspaper basically for higher education for, even when I was back in the day when I was even a graduate student. So they've been around for quite a while. Now that they've gone online, they have always had a very large job board where you go to find faculty positions and stuff. Well, now they've gone into the social media piece, and what they allow you to do is they basically set up a virtual curriculum vitae online. I've got a couple screenshots here. This is the first one where I can pick on them and say, boy, they use a lot of good web space just to have my tiny little picture up there at the top. But there I am. You can modify these things and set them up. They're very customizable. On the first part of mine, you see my education, a little bit about me. You go to the next slide, you get a better sense of kind of the information that's in there. I've kind of had to split it between two. I mean, you set these things up just like a CV, and it's all very customizable. Up at the top there, you're starting to see the bottom part of the jobs I've put in there. I put some things in there. I don't have everything I've done in there, but mostly academic-related stuff. You see my publications. I've set it to only show the last 3 that I've had, and you can wag your finger at me. I should have something more current, but I don't. Presentations I've done, and all of these blue that you see are clickable links that take you to more information about those. If I wanted to, I could put a teaching statement in there. I have a list of the courses that I've taught that I've put in there. If you go on down the screen, I have screenshots of this. There's places for you to put in your committees that you've served on, the professional groups you belong to. It really is basically a online vitae. What's cool about it, and why I'd highly, highly recommend you to set this up if you haven't already, is that what we find now is when you go back into their job board, and you see this job at Walden University. Well, I don't know if we use it. I better not say that. Say I'm wanting to go to state university somewhere. Increasingly now you see an opportunity for you to click a link where you submit your vitae in your curriculum vitae here, like mine that you're looking at, instead of submitting your regular one. That they've made this their kind of already online sort of thing. The curriculum, the Chronicle people, they also have groups around these things. I can belong to groups. I don't belong to any of them. You can engage in conversations. They really have done a pretty good job of integrating it into a lot of the other services. They are behind the 8 ball. I think that they compete pretty directly with LinkedIn. And where this group has tried to build something for scholars and researchers just for that, LinkedIn has tried to expand into that market. I've been in both of them. I think this is much more amenable to people who are thinking about an academic career. And we have some time that, I know I'm pushing through these pretty quickly, but we've left some time at the end to answer any questions. Another one of these sites that has a whole different kind of spin to it that you're hopefully familiar with is Mendeley. And Mendeley is like Zotero, which you may also be familiar with. It's kind of a place where you can put your work. You can set up virtual bibliographies. You can set up a little group of your colleagues who are working on a grant or something. You can put your articles in it. They also have discussions. They're getting more and more built out. I don't use Mendeley for all the social media piece, but I do use it for as a bibliography, so that it's all synced between my iPad and my computer and all that sort of stuff. And then I have a bibliography, don't see it on here, but is for research on doctoral students that many of us are doing some research projects. So I can share that with other like-minded researchers. And it gives me a little way to network. Is it a replacement for your CV? No, there's not much opportunity for me to put all that kind of information about myself in there. It really is a way for me to just kind of share the knowledge, if you will. So I set up folders for myself, and I can make those group folders. I can invite people in. I can have people follow me. You should maybe already be familiar with Mendeley or Zotero or something like that. But it's a good way for you to just kind of share the scholarly work that you're doing. I mean, it's really about the nuts and bolts of writing something or getting something done. Next screen, please. I'm going to take a sip of hot tea here. Okay, Twitter. Twitter is another account that I would highly recommend you set one up if you don't have one. And I would highly recommend you set up one for your professional life that you can keep separate from your Twitter feed where you're following Beyonce or your favorite NBA team. You know, keep your personal Twitter account separate from your professional one. Do you have to tweet? No. But I'm a big fan of Twitter because of the two things you see on the screen here. One thing that you can do on Twitter is follow various professional groups. And I know it costs a lot to belong to a professional group. Most of the ones I belong to are $200 or more to join that group. But what I can do that for those that I don't belong to is I can follow them on Twitter. And you see I've set up a higher education professional groups list. So what happens is the tweets from these professional groups that I follow wind up in the list. Why is that important for you as a scholar? Well, one, if you're looking for a grant or something that professional group might be sponsoring, almost always gets tweeted out of their account before it ever shows up. Things that go in their newsletter, all that information that you would get by being a member often goes into their feed. So you see, I follow the American Association of University Professors, the AAUP, ACPA, the American College Personnel Association. Those are some of the groups I either follow or belong to. Been an ACPA member for many years. It also gives me some other suggestions like AAU or ACE. I thought that I did follow ACE, but I need to. Anyway, I could follow them. I don't want to get too involved in the mechanics of Twitter. What I have asked Twitter to do is just show me their tweets and not follow them, so that their tweets don't show up in my main feed. I set up a list here. So you could set up a list for a lot of different groups. There are a lot of groups that they tweet out stuff about them, professional groups. The other thing, if you're not familiar with, and Lisa, this may be number 6. We're going to have to somewhere have a big discussion about hashtags and all the give and take about how to be out on the internet. But if you're not familiar with a hashtag, it's kind of like a way that a topic is tagged or something. So if one of my favorite hashtags out there, and I'd recommend if you have a Twitter account to follow this one, it's called PhD Chat. And another one is ECR Chat, Early Career Researcher Chat. These are doctoral students like yourself who are sharing information that they have out there about the doctoral experience, and they put that hashtag on it so that other doctoral students can see it. Highly recommend you do that, but one other caveat is that people who are trying to sell you something, some of them have found these hashtags. So you see that second one here, right, that PhD, that's actually a for-profit company that tries to sell services to PhD students who actually don't need them, but they want them to have them anyway. So they have these faux postings, if you will, that look like they're involved. So you got to kind of be a good consumer of this stuff. But almost every professional area, there's a hashtag for ed tech, there's a hashtag for Carl Jung. I mean, there's so many of the different ones out there, and if it's not one, you could start one. So Twitter, not just for following Beyonce or your NBA team or finding what's trending in the country at the moment. It really can be a productive tool for you as a scholar. Okay, moving on. Okay, ResearchGate. I know a lot of Walden students belong to ResearchGate. I think the last Waldenites, people who are somehow connected to Walden, either faculty or graduates or students. I want to say the last count, it was like at 7,000, some ridiculous number like that. So popular place for it, and let's spend a little time with this one. ResearchGate is is truly more, if you could say there was a Facebook for academic types, this is probably as close to that as you're going to get. It has got a lot of social media components to it. It's also got a lot of opportunity for you to set up a profile that looks very much like the profile that I had showed you in Google. It allows you to set up your own bibliography of your own articles. And the difference between Google and ResearchGate is you see that One University's Approach article there. I can upload that into ResearchGate and make it available to other scholars. In Google, it just shows other scholars a link for it, and you have to have the library access to get it. And that's been part of the controversy around ResearchGate, because I can upload articles that are still in prohibition or behind a paywall and make it available to everybody. So the publishers don't like it too much, but and I tell students all the time, if you can't find an article that you're looking for or can't access it in the library, then come look in ResearchGate, and the other one is Academia U, because chances are that author has uploaded it to their profile. So again, you see my smiling bald head there, and you also get to see all the information about me. I have an opportunity, this is what I see when I look at the screen. I have an opportunity to add an article if I've just published one. You see I've got 26 kinds of announcements. That's because I follow different sorts of discussion groups in ResearchGate, similar to the ones that I tagged myself back in Google Scholar. Got some messages probably from people wanting an article that I've not uploaded or something. Funny thing about ResearchGate, and it's just where I can make my point about you've got to be careful about technology out there, is it's always going to look, they have a job component here, and I see the mouse moving around where I have the little question marks there. For some reason, ResearchGate thinks I might have worked at the Indianapolis Zoo. Now, I've been there, grew up in Indiana, but I don't know what in their algorithm makes them think I belong to the zoo. So one of the things you've got to be careful about ResearchGate is that it shows other researchers, is this your article? You see one here, add to your publications there on the left-hand side. That article that I wrote with a couple of my colleagues, one of the ones that has resonated pretty well with the scholarly community. It was a test-retest study of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. It's asking me, even though I've added it already, they found it somewhere else, so they want to know if I want to add it. I probably won't. So what we find now in ResearchGate are authors who just click on everything and add them. So they've got thousands of things attached to their profile, even though they never actually did it. So you got to be a little cautious when you look at somebody's profile and you see somebody who's just got a PhD 2 years ago and has 2,000 publications. You need to be a little suspect there about it. So just buyer beware as you go into these. A couple more things on this screen before we get down to the other ones. If you were to go to my regular profile, this is what I see. If I go to my regular profile, you will see a little different kind of screen. It'll have my publications and that sort of stuff. I just want to highlight a couple of things here on the About. See, I put my ORC-ID number in there so that others know that it's me. And in case my smiling face and they haven't met me before doesn't tip them off, then they have that to kind of go back to. The other thing I've put in there is a link back to this shared bibliography of 1,000 research articles I found on doctoral students and research about doctoral education. So it gives me a way to connect this service to some of the others out there. Up at the top, there's a lot to this site. That's why I want to spend a little time here. Home and questions. The questions part up at the top is, you know, if I had a question, I could post it to a group that is all about ed tech, and I could say, what do you all think about Zoom as opposed to Skype? And I could type that question in, and I might get some responses to it. What ResearchGate is trying to do is trying to eat a piece of the pie that the Chronicle people are about and the LinkedIn people are about, is becoming a job board. They are so far behind in where these other two providers are, you can't even, they're not even close. And that's what I'm saying. I can understand why they're not close, because they think I worked at the Indianapolis Zoo. Okay, Nicole, the next screen here. So if you go down onto the rest of the screen, you see all the other kind of information that should let you begin to see how this is really a social media kind of environment here. Again, it's got some of my featured publications. I think what the ResearchGate does, people, is just gives me a metric on how many people have downloaded and looked at it in ResearchGate. Google does a much better job of tracking your downloads and those things across the internet, and will give you a much better kind of thing. You know that. Anyway, so those are a couple recent things. I've uploaded some of mine that are in open access journals, like that second one there is in our own journal of educational research and practice that the Walden University sponsors, and it's open access, so I can put that up there. The third one there is in press article. So I don't have a copy of that put up there. And you know, Lisa, number 7 workshop we do is around copyright and understanding how all of that works. But for now, back to this place, you see my topics down below there, kind of on the bottom left-hand side. Again, they mirror the interest that I tagged myself over in the Google Scholar thing. These are my interest areas, and I can go in and see what others think. You know, this whole stuff on the right-hand side, I'm not a big fan of the skills and expertise stuff. LinkedIn does it, others do it. I just don't, you know, I haven't figured out how that actually works well for me at my point in my career. You know, my friends Sheila and Beate, they've just recently endorsed me for these kinds of things, so, or I get to endorse them in some way. Again, I don't know how that advances me at this point, but for a new person, you might want to. It's similar to what they do on LinkedIn. You also see my co-authors there, my buddy Ray Junco at Iowa State, my old master's advisor I've known forever, Nancy Evans, and I, colleagues of mine, Dr. Vandiver at Western Michigan. These are all people that I've worked with in some capacity that they are telling me to connect with. You see a list of the people that I follow there. You can't see those pictures very well, but that third person there is Dr. Rydell, our Chief Academic Officer. So, and then all the people who follow me. You know, I think if I were to choose one of these, recommend one of these kind of really Facebook for Scholar places for you, it would be this one, only because there's so many Walden people already in it. At the very bottom, gives me a chance to export my profile as a CV. Again, if that's your goal and you're looking for a job and you've only got a fixed amount of time in your day where you're not feeding the kids and doing your job and mowing your yard, the Chronicle place is the place to set that up, not here in ResearchGate. Okay, I think, do I have one more? Nicole? No, I don't. Okay, so those were some of the ones that are out there. And, you know, like I said, I've gone through them pretty quickly. I'm sure there's some questions you have. I want to try to answer specific sorts of issues you have, but I do want to highlight some others and some other things you may want to consider doing. These kind of profile sites like we were just looking at, like ResearchGate, another one that's very similar to it is Academia U. The Microsoft people used to have one, but it's kind of faded away into obscurity. A new one coming up on the outside, though, is one called Pyrrhus. And Pyrrhus, or Pius, I guess, I don't know how they say it, but I think it's Pyrrhus because it really is a similar site to ResearchGate designed specifically for finding collaborators. So you put your information in and say, I'm interested in collaborating on these topics, and other people can search for you and find you and make that kind of scholar dating service that they're trying to offer to folks. It's something out of the UK. I've been following them for a while. A problem I'm having is that they are beginning to add a lot of monetized services that it's kind of hard to separate what is someone trying to sell me something from something that's a legitimate piece of information that I want to know. Scholar repositories, I mentioned Mendeley. One of them I should have on this list is ScholarWorks. Many of you, if you haven't already finished up, your dissertation and doctoral study will also go into our university repository. These are repositories and places where you can put stuff. I played around. A new one is Open Science Framework. If any of you ever invest the time and go play with that, and it's new, it's open source. It's a big complex thing. I've gone in there a few times. It's probably a great thing if I was starting up a multi-person grant-funded research project with lots of moving parts. This is perfect for that. For most things I do, I can manage it right on my little computer here. So it's something that's kind of coming up, open source. It's a very interesting little phenomenon. I've not spent a lot of time with it, but I think it's got some potential. Many of my colleagues, like my buddy Ray Hunko that I talked about earlier, they're bloggers, and they blog a lot. And I think that if you have something to say and want an opportunity to put it out there for the community of scholars, I say go for it. Blogger, which is the service through Google owns, and WordPress is like a much better version of it. It's like Blogger is the Kmart and WordPress is the Macy's of these kinds of things. I mean, it's just a much better sort of thing. And in WordPress, you can kind of own your own URL. You know, if you've got the time and energy and something to say, blog. And I think number 8 on our list is probably there's a webinar that we could do around just blogging and getting your information out in that environment. Some non-academic but potentially useful to you, Facebook. You know, I don't have a Facebook account, but I know a lot of people who do. And I have all this other stuff, but for some reason I don't have Facebook. But I think Facebook is kind of now, as we shook all this stuff out, has become the default social media solution for your personal life. And in that way, it's good for that. You always know what your friends from high school are doing. Because there's so many other solutions out there that are growing in popularity, there's no reason for you to run your research life through Facebook. Others may disagree, but I just think keeping them separate. I mentioned LinkedIn before, which has just recently been bought by Microsoft for some ridiculous number, like $26 billion or something like that. So I don't know how that's going to change in the future. I know that Walden has a pretty specific relationship with them. Again, there are groups in there. I know the career services have a very large group. Definitely worth exploring. Again, I didn't spend much time here because I figure, you know, Lisa and her group have provided lots of kind of experiences for you. Another one is Google+. I'm a fan of Google+. I have Google+ kind of a space I like to post in just because I can. You know, everybody finds their way to ones that fits who they are as a person, and that's it. The other thing, and this is something that I've added to the, you know, I'm reprising this. This is the second time we've done this session, but this last line is something I added that, you know, I think it's each of you, if you're planning a research career and you've got a big line of research you want to do, you may want to claim some sort of domain for it. Meaning, you know, my research is environmentaltypes.com. I have a domain for it. I've done a lot of stuff on Jungian stuff, and I've not been there for a while, but I mention it now because I got an invitation from a publisher to write a chapter in a book based on their encounter of my domain, my research on my site. So again, these things are all connected. They're all searchable. You know, they may find their way to you in kind of the most circular pattern, but it's a way to keep your name out there and keep engaged. And I'm sorry for the background noise. Apparently there's about to be a party at my house here in an hour or so. So that, I think that's my last slide here, maybe. Yeah, question. So Lisa and Nicole, I hope all 91 of you have generated some questions into the question box, because it's much better if I answer some specific things than kind of anticipating what you want to know. So,
Great.
Lisa, do you got a question here?
I do. Can you repeat how you registered on Google Scholar again? We have a student, Yara, is interested in doing that.
How do you register on Google Scholar?
Yeah.
I think what you will want to do is, when you're in the university Google environment, one of the, you know, how when you're in the Google environment, you've got Drive and you've got Gmail and YouTube and all these different things. Well, Google Scholar is one of those kinds of things. So if you're logged into your Walden Google account and you go to Google Scholar and just type that into the search bar, it'll take you there, and it will likely, at that point, if you haven't set up an account, set up your profile, will ask you to do that. If that doesn't work, I don't know who asked the question, just shoot me an email. It's been so long since I've done it, I've forgotten how it worked, and it may be different now. But it is a service just like all the other Google services, Blogger, YouTube, Drive, and it should automatically recognize you. It won't fill in your profile, though.
Got it. And the other, I know another way you can access Google Scholar through the library too, because they have a search function where you can, if you log into Google while you're in Google Scholar, it will tell you if Walden Library has the article that you're looking for. So I know that's another option too.
Yeah, I think if you're in the main Google Scholar screen where there's like the little Google search bar, there's an option up at the top for you to set up your profile.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Grace asks, I just started my master's and I don't really have too many credentials yet. Do you have any suggestions when creating a ResearchGate profile?
You know, Grace, that's a great question. You know, let me think about this. You know, there's a lot about research that, you know, you have to build. I've been a researcher and writer for 30 years, so I've got a lot of stuff that I can put into something like that if I wanted to do that right now. Did I have all that stuff when I was starting out? No. But what you can start doing, though, is establishing your identity as a person who is involved in conversations. You know, follow some of these different discussion groups, ones that interest you and what your academic area is. And if you've got something that is worth contributing to that discussion, then do it. Make sure you know that everybody will see it. So it needs to be kind of correct. But you know, that's a way to start establishing a bit of a footprint. I also think that you will find that as you get into some of these groups, you are going to identify folks who are interested in the same sorts of things you are. Maybe something that's more relevant when you do come back and get your doctoral degree with us, hint, hint, but I think that you can start laying the groundwork even as a master's student. The topic that became my dissertation, I identified it toward the end of my master's program, and I was out for a few years. I came back. So we didn't have this kind of stuff back then when we were out fighting the saber-toothed tigers. I mean, it was different then. But now you've got an opportunity to set that kind of stuff up. So Grace, that's what I would do, is start getting involved in some of these things, following them, get familiar with the interface, and learn from it.
Great. Thank you. And Rachel asks, how would you use Facebook as an academic type tool? How would you use it as a useful tool in the academic world?
Well, you know, as I said before, for a lot of reasons that we could spend the rest of the evening talking about, I don't have a Facebook account. But I know many people who do, and they do use it for scholarly things. I think in Facebook is like Twitter in that there are these conversations going on amongst people in these particular areas. So like the AAUP, I know they have a Twitter account. I'm like 1,000% sure they have a Facebook account. So I could follow them on Facebook as well and set that sort of stuff up. It's just that, again, I would just caution you to be very careful to keep a boundary between your personal life and your professional life. Because even though they're not supposed to do it, If you're in the job search, there's nothing that prevents somebody on that search committee to Google your name.
Great. Thank you. And then if you had to choose one of the resources, one of the websites that you mentioned, Daniel, is the first and topmost one, Joseph's asking, where would you start of those web resources?
Well, you know, Joseph, I will give two answers to that. Like I said at the beginning, it depends on the you that you are. If your only goal is to continue the research that you've started and keep building that and get networked with some like-minded scholars and keeping the conversation, then probably ResearchGate is the place to go. I'd start there. I think you'll find it a friendly environment. There's already a lot of Walden people. You know, you can follow me, and please do. I mean, I think for that that would be a way to go. If you have, on the other hand, if your agenda is to really start looking for some sort of teaching appointment or academic appointment or something along those lines, then your time is probably better spent getting yourself into the Chronicle environment. Because I think even if you have a few things, I mean, there's opportunities to upload teaching statements about how you teach, your research interest, all those sort of things. You don't need to have a ton of publications to use that kind of thing. So it would depend a little bit on the path. I think if I had to pick one of them all for you to start with, ResearchGate would be it.
Great, thank you. And we received two questions on the ORCID, and can one get that before they have finished their dissertation? And what is the website for getting that, please?
You will be able to access this PowerPoint after it's archived, and there's a link in it, right, Lisa? They'll be able to access this.
Yes, we will archive the slides with this. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, just do a search on ORCID, and it'll take you right there. No, you don't have to have a terminal degree. You just need to have an interest in having one of those accounts. So, you know, again, it's not like you're claiming. It's not like you're trying to buy the domain name. I'd love to have danielsalter.com, but somebody else has it already. So, you know, it's not like that. They will just give you a number, just like Social Security number. So if you feel like you're going to be a player or want to have that peace of mind that everybody will know who you are specifically, it takes, I don't know, 20 minutes to set it up, if that.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And since you started our presentation with Googling yourself, if you do find that there are less than stellar things out there, do you have any suggestions for cleaning up your digital identity?
I don't know. I think our presidential nominees apparent have kind of this problem as well. It's no, there's really, it would depend on what it is. You know, it's I don't know. You know,
okay.
If you, it's hard to say. Boy, that's a deep question here. Nobody else has this figured out, so I don't know that I do. But I do think that you can. But what you learn is that a lot of these things are based on search. So what you want to do is be able to put out as many positive products that people want to click on, so you don't get the Rick Santorum effect of people putting something negative about him out there, and then hundreds of thousands of people searching on that term all the time, so it moves up the list. I mean, you know, so that's where you just got to be really, like I said at the beginning, really, really careful. And if you see something like that, then you need to start getting yourself mentally prepared. You know, I don't know, maybe in where I live, if you accidentally hit a cow with your car and kill it, that's like a capital crime around here. So you might wind up in the paper in some way, and that might be the thing that pops up. You just need to be prepared in your head. If somebody actually asks you about it, how do you respond?
Great. Okay. Well, I guess if we were to look at the flip side of that question, any safety tips when setting up your online identity? In ResearchGate or any of the other sites? I guess you've mentioned the ORCID, right, to prevent someone from, not knowing the right Daniel Salter.
Yeah, and that's kind of an issue for Twitter. That as a matter of fact, on Twitter, it's very popular to have all these celebrity Twitter accounts that aren't actually the celebrities that people are pretending to be. And I think there are like 7 or 8 people who claim to be God on Twitter. So, it's just, but if your name hasn't been taken, get in there and get it as a handle in some way. I would say, Lisa, the tip we say, not the tip, the admonition that we give to people about email applies here probably twice over is don't put anything into your Twitter feed, into your blog, into your posting that you wouldn't want on CNN at some point. Because your Twitter feed, your blog postings, all those things are public to the world information. And because you put it out there, CNN or Fox or those folks can say, well, here's a post that we found by Lisa Cook talking just about this issue here. So that's why your best defense is a good offense in the sense that don't put anything in there that you don't want to be seen.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And just one more comment too, and I know I mentioned this too. We had a student who did a blog post for us who had actually blogged on her doctoral research and ended up plagiarizing herself. So I guess another cautionary tip is just to be really careful that that doesn't happen to you, that you're not, verbatim taking, your what you've written from one place and posting it someplace else. Because she never realized that it could be a possibility that you plagiarized yourself, but she did.
I would take that one step further. A lot of researchers have kind of gotten caught with their virtual pants down because what will happen is they'll run their research study. They will post the findings. Wow, look at this great stuff we found. That article will go into the peer review process. Their colleagues will look at it and go, well, you know what, you missed this and this and this. And suddenly they've had to retract it. But what's happened is they've put it out there already in social media. So, you got to be careful to not jump the gun. And you just got to be super cautious and about it and all this sort of stuff. But that's not a reason not to use it and not to be out there learning about it. And, now, especially if you're a student now to get familiar with it so that when it's mission critical time and you're trying to get that job or you're trying to set up a grant, then you know what it's all about.
What do you think of using class assignments on, for example, LinkedIn self-published blog posts?
Well, let me say a little thing. I'm not trying to keep an eye on the time here, too, because I know you have some wrap-up stuff to do. But this is a thing to end on. I think the word. I would caution everybody to be careful of the word publishing. It is a very complicated term in how it gets used. A lot of students think they're published because their dissertation goes into ProQuest. That's really not the case. ProQuest is really more of a repository like ERIC or ScholarWorks or something like that. All the ProQuest people do is say to you, your university says you've done a dissertation, we're going to log it in here and make it available to other people. They don't vet the quality of that thing. That's the university's job. So while it's available and it's a form of published and that people can get a hold of it, it's not published in the way that scholars talk about it. I think a good rule of thumb, especially if you're in a doctoral program right now, is if it's something that you could cite legitimately and your committee would let you cite it in your dissertation, then I would call that a publication in the sense that it's been peer reviewed and it's out there for public consumption. Now, Lisa, you brought up a great point, and it's perfectly fine to do. Some students in all of these, not just LinkedIn, but in ResearchGate, if they've got a well-written paper that they've done, they may feel like they want to put that up there as an example of their writing. That's fine as long as you understand that everybody from here to China can access that and can, you're protected on some level. Like I said, a whole webinar on copyright would be good, but you're protected on some level, but on some levels you're not. What happens is, and what you don't want to do because it really it sends the wrong signal, is to take something written in the class, write it up, and make it look like a published research article, and put it on your account there, and let people think that that's that. Because if they find you doing that, then that kind of puts you in a different kind of light, and probably not what you want. So, okay to put a work product up. I wouldn't put every paper you wrote, but often you get asked for writing samples when you're going to go for a faculty job or something. And that if you've not published anything, that's the way to get it done. But only use publishing in regard to something that, for us, was peer-reviewed. Unless we're talking about a book, and that's a whole other kind of thing. A book is a whole different thing. If you self-publish a book, it's, you got an ISBN number and all that stuff. Again, Lisa, it's a very big topic. I would say, back to your question about putting stuff that you've written in class on your site, one thing, I'd only allow yourself to put one good thing on there.
Great, thank you.
And make sure everybody's clear that it was a paper that you wrote for class and not something else. And then don't list it under publication.
Got it. Thank you. Great advice. Thank you very much. So that said, that's it for questions. So I'm going to hand it off to Nicole to wrap up our webinar. And thank you.
Yeah, great.
For,
that was fantastic.
For our audience, you gave great questions. And thank you, Dr. Salter, for a terrific presentation. Fantastic.
Okay, great. So we just want to remind everyone of the Career Services website. You can access it through your portal or careercenter.waldenu.edu. And there's a few key resources here that I want to highlight on the next few slides that my colleague Dina Berggren has developed recently. The doctoral resources page. This is a brand new page specifically for doctoral students, and it's really your one-stop resource with links to curriculum vitae resources and guidelines, the doctoral webinar series, which is actually where this webinar will be recorded and archived, and networking sites for academics and researchers. So many of the platforms that Dr. Salter mentioned on today's webinar, we also have links there. So you definitely want to check out this doctoral resources page.
And I also want to mention, too, that the academic signature guidelines are on there, and Dr. Salter played a key role in developing that information. So that means, when you can advertise yourself, as having your doctorate and what the different stages are after your dissertation topic has been approved, for example. So please be sure, if you have any questions about that, to read that on the doctoral resources page.
Thank you, Lisa. Fantastic. Yes. And then here's kind of a screenshot of all of the webinars that we've been building over the last few years, what we're calling our doctoral webinar series. So again, a lot of higher education webinars, many of them with Dr. Salter, the scoop on hiring, getting published, creating and developing your CV, and then this one will be archived there as well. And also transitioning into the academic world through professional associations, conferences. So really a broad range of resources that we've collaborated with many of our esteemed faculty from Walden on these webinars. And with that, we want to end it with an inspiring quote here. Social media is changing the way we communicate, the way we are perceived, both positively and negatively. So many of which that we discussed today. Every time you post a photo or update your status, you are contributing to your own digital footprint and personal brand. So that really kind of wraps up and reinforces what we talked about. We really want to thank Dr. Salter for joining us and delivering this presentation, and have a wonderful evening.